the end of the day, man, you put as many assets as you can into the quarterback position. I don't have a problem with this at all. I don't have a problem with the thought process. I don't have a problem with the logic of it. Add on to the fact that I loved Michael Penix. I loved him coming out. He was my number 3 quarterback in this class. Welcome into the Atlanta Falcons 2024 draft class review after one season in the NFL. And this is a super interesting one. Looking at the draft class, it's the class that obviously is going to be defined by Michael Penix Jr. going 8th overall. We'll talk about that, but ultimately not really much more to talk about other than just the thought process going in. And we'll discuss that a little bit. And then, of course, they hit defensive line heavy with the next 3 picks. Obviously, this class is going to be completely dependent on what Michael Penix does on the field. And that's probably the right thing. That's what it should be. But I want to talk just for a second from a process standpoint, from a thought process standpoint. And I will say that I'm on record not loving what the Falcons have done with their early picks in past drafts, just, kind of valuing the sexy pick versus maybe the more traditional team building pick, and I won't super get into that, but taking the tight end over the tackle, taking the running back over the whatever other pick they could have gotten instead of Bijan. And again, it's super nitpicky, and I'm not trying to go back and rehash other arguments, but I have in the past not loved what the Falcons have done from a team building, game theory, optimization of your assets type of mentality. Haven't loved it. I love what they did in this draft. I really do. Now, this is the one that got hated, I think, by all of the big media. It was kind of universally panned, at least from the media that I saw, saying that the Falcons didn't have a plan. They spent all this money on Kirk Cousins, and then they bring in a rookie quarterback. And what's the thought process here? And I get that, and there's definitely a conversation that can be had there. But at the end of the day, man, you put as many assets as you can into the quarterback position. I don't have a problem with this at all. I don't have a problem with the thought process. I don't have a problem with the logic of it. Add on to the fact that I loved Michael Penix. I loved him coming out. He was my number 3 quarterback in this class. I liked him more than Drake May. I liked him more than JJ. I know that's a little bit outside of the norm for most guys. I think most guys had him as like either the 5th or 6th quarterback in this class. I didn't see it that way. I really thought he was the 3rd best in this class. So he went right in the range that I thought he deserved to go. And I think the logic makes sense. As I said, I think spend as many assets as you can on the quarterback position. Now, instead of going defensive line for that first pick, they had to address the defensive line later down that draft. They did exactly what I think any good team does. They doubled up, and in this case, they tripled up. The next 3 picks in the draft for the Falcons were all defensive line. They went D-tackle, edge, D-tackle. And look, it didn't work out ultimately, and we're going to talk about all those players real quick, but just to clump them all together for a second, you got a total of 166 snaps out of all 3 players. And yeah, that's unfortunate, but don't put results over process, all right? The process was good. The thought process was there. You took guys that you thought could be impactful. They weren't. We'll see what happens moving forward, and I'm not out on any of these guys. We're going to, again, talk about them. Yeah, it was definitely an issue for the Falcons, and it's something they're going to have to address either in free agency or the 2025 draft. I'll say the 2025 draft, great draft to address defensive line. As kind of not deep as the 2024 class was, this 2025 class is looking like it's going to be very deep. I'm getting in the weeds a little bit. I do apologize. I'm a draft nerd, so I can't help just kind of diving into the thought process and the logic of it because that's kind of the shit that I love. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Rook Aroraro out of Clemson. I love that name. Healthy scratch to start the season. Was a tough start for him. He ended up having an ankle injury that lands him on IR in week 8, gets back on the field in week 15, 0 starts and limited impact, but he did have a positive impact down the stretch, and he's reportedly having positive momentum to end the season. So we'll see what happens there. It just wasn't a big enough sample size for me to have a big impact. They traded up for this pick, so this was a guy that they certainly liked, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you have your guy. There were definitely some guys that were drafted in that range in the 2nd round that were ultimately better, more impactful on the field, but that's hindsight, and I don't traffic in that because you just can't allow yourself to think that way because you just go crazy with what could have been all the time, and that's just not how the NFL world works. That's not how drafting works. It's guys fitting in a scheme and a system and all these other things, right? Their 3rd round pick, Braylon Trace out of Washington, their 2nd Washington pick, tore his ACL in the first preseason game, so that's super unfortunate. Got no production out of him. And then their 4th round pick, Brandon Dorlus out of Oregon, he doesn't get on the field until week 11 and played in just 2 games and 19 snaps total. So yeah, unfortunate that he couldn't get on the field on a team that obviously was having pretty underwhelming defensive line play, but that just is what it is. We'll see what happens with him next year. I don't have high hopes for that, but 4th round pick, that just is what it is. We'll see what happens there. Rook, I think, is a guy that does seem like he's going to have a bigger impact in year 2 and year 3. So again, we'll see. The only other guy of note on the team was J.D. Bertrand. Maybe I'm saying that name right. I don't know. The linebacker of Notre Dame was a special teams guy, and he got on the field a little bit, but he wasn't super impactful on the field either. But again, like I said at the beginning of this video, the draft starts and ends with Michael Penix Jr. You look like an absolute genius with the way Kirk Cousins was playing down the stretch, with how good Penix looked in his limited starts down the stretch. You look like a genius for the move you made. Now look, that is hindsight, and you can kind of say you're an idiot or you're a genius based on how things go in any situation all the time, and that's just not how the world works. So I try not to say that as much as I can, but I was one of the people that liked the move when it happened, so to see it working out as well as it has, man, this is exciting for the Falcons. Really, really excited to see what Penix can do moving forward. He's got a lot of weapons. It's just Falcons every year spend a top 10 pick on a weapon. They love their weapons down in Atlanta, man. And now moving forward, looks like you're just going to trade Kirk Cousins, because there's at least 3 or 4 teams that I can think of off the top of my head that would use Kirk Cousins in a heartbeat. You'll probably get some kind of something back for him, or you'll just not have to take the contract on. Either way, that's a win. But we'll see what happens. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.